we will look at graphing equations using your calculator. So if you're given the equation y equals 2x, if you did this by hand, what you would look at is just substituting values for x into your equation and then find the y values. So for example, when x was -3, you would do 2 times -3 and get -6 for an answer. And then you go to -2, plug that in for x, and you end up with 2 times -2, which is -4. And you would continue that on until you're filled in the table. And then you would go over and plot the points. So just to show you some basic examples using your calculator and how to graph using your calculator. So what you do on the TI-30 multi-view calculator is you press the table button, and that'll take you to the y equals. Now I already have an equation in there, so I'm just going to clear whatever was in there. Or you can press delete and get rid of whatever's in there. And then just enter in your equation, 2x. Okay, so I'm going to hit 2, and then the x variable button, it says x, y, z, t, a, b, c. That is your x variable button. Okay, so my equation is y equals 2x. So once you have your equation in there, press enter, and that'll take you to your table setup. So if I say starting is at -3, step 1, that means your table is going to start at -3, and the step equals 1 means that you're going to go from -3 up 1. So to -2, -1, 0, and so on. Okay, so that is okay to use for your settings. Scroll down and click OK, and there's your table. So notice the first 2 values are what I have in there, and then I can just enter the rest of them in, and you can use this gray scrolling pad here to move down in the table or up in the table. Okay, so -2, 0, 2, so when x is 1, y is 2, and so on. So that's one you should be able to do by hand with no problem, but I just want to show you that one because that's how you put it in your calculator. Okay, and then you can go through and plot the points on the grid. And in a few minutes, I will show you what the graphs look like. Let's move on to the next one though. Y equals x squared. Okay, so again, if I'm on the home screen, if you press your table, that takes you to your equation. And then if I press clear, that'll clear whatever equation is in there. So then I want to do x squared. So your variable is x, and then you can either press the squared key or this key or this button right here. That means exponent. And notice that it put it up in the corner there where the exponent goes. Okay, so there's y equals x squared. Okay, then if I press enter, it takes me back to the table. Now it just says, mine just says start at 1, but I could put whatever I want in there. If I wanted to start at -3 again, that's the table that I asked you to fill in. So if I just start at -3 and then go up by 1 again, it's going to give me that same type of table. Now let me just show you, if I were to make that, say, a step of 0.5. So what that'll do in the table, I'll start at -3, and then the next x value is going to go up by 0.5, which will be -2.5. Okay, and you can see that in the table here. That's how you get some other values in your table. Okay, so I'm just going to go back and change that back to 1. And then you can fill in your table of values, -3, 9. Okay, so when x is -3, the y value is 9. And a lot of students will miss that. When you substitute -3 in, you're doing -3 squared, which is +9. Okay, so then if you go in and fill in the rest of the table, 4, 1, 0, 1, and then 4 and 9. Okay, and then again, I'll show you what the graph looks like in a second. If I now clear that out and I'll put in the third one. or part C, which is y equals 2 to the x. So now x is the exponent, so I could put in 2, and then the exponent key, so like the upside down v that I used for the squared, and then put in the x variable there, and then press enter. Again, I could change it to -3 to start at, and click OK. Now the reason I wanted to go over this one with you also is, notice it gives you fractions. Well, sometimes, just depending what the fractions are, they may be difficult to graph, because remember, we're going to put these on a grid here after we get the points. So one thing you can do is you can use your arrow key to scroll over and highlight the fraction, and then if I hit the arrow, the double arrow button, that'll change your number to a decimal, or vice versa, your decimal into a fraction. So notice I'm highlighted on the 1/8, and when I press this double arrow button right here, it gave me 0.125. So plotting it on the graph is 0.125. That might be easier to plot than 1/8, because sometimes students have a hard time with fractions. Okay, then the next one, when x is -2, you get 1/4. And again, if I hit the arrow button, oops, it gives me 0.25, and so on. Okay, so you can go through and fill those in. Take a minute and pause the video, and I will put the graphs up of what those two look like. So there's the graph of the first two. Okay, the first one is a nice line. The second one is this U shape, or a quadratic, or a parabola. And then the third one, part C, there's the table and graph for it. Okay, this is kind of a weird graph where as you go farther and farther to the left, so as x gets smaller and smaller, you end up getting closer and closer to 0 for the y value. Okay, then if we look at the second page, we have a few different graphs. Y equals x squared minus 4, and then y equals 2 to the x minus 8. So again, those are ones that I would have you put them in the calculator. Okay, just like we did the first couple, just put them in the calculator. Okay, if you want to do y equals x squared minus 4, again, you press table, x, and then the exponent key of 2. Now, the reason I'm showing this to you is because notice how after we put that 2 in, or the squared, notice that we are still up in the exponent on the cursor. We have to still put in the minus 4, or subtracting 4. So move that cursor using the arrow, using the scroll arrow here, and then minus 4 like that. Okay, so then you can press enter, and then again create your graph. The last thing I'll show you with graphing using the calculator, when you get to your table of your table setup, notice how there's also this Ask X. If I highlight that and then scroll down to OK, notice what happens. There's nothing there in the table. What that means is the Ask X means that you're going to put in whatever you want into the calculator. So if I wanted to say -3, I have to type it in and then press enter, and it gives me the point on the graph. Now just suppose I wanted to graph 2.7. So 2.7, I could enter that in, and that gives me this weird fraction of 329 over 100, which will be 3.29. Okay, so that's what the Ask X will do, is it'll allow you to put in whatever you want for X, and not just a set table. Okay, so here is the answer key for the last two examples. Y equals x squared minus 4. And I apologize if you hear my dog in the background making noise. And then the y equals 2 to the x minus 8. Again, you get some really weird numbers here for some of the values. You get some decimals and some fractions involved. Okay, so those are what the two graphs look like. In the last one here, I also included the 0.48 because that was a nice point on the grid. Okay, so that takes care of using your calculator to graph equations.